Hello, and welcome to my actual forest. It is truly a jungle behind me. So this bed is my long bed that I will show you more of, but that goes all the way across the front of my front yard. And it has truly taken over. And why have I let it get like this, you may ask? Well, it's because secretly, not so secretly, I kind of love having an absolute jungle of tomatoes and squash behind me. Is it the most efficient way of growing these foods? No. But does it look awesome and feel really fulfilling to have plants that are competing with my own height? It does. But so that is why I have kind of let it get to this point. Truly, if they were staked up properly, I think some of these tomatoes would be about my height. I am standing at about almost 5'9". I'd say they're 5'8" or 9, and they are definitely coming up to almost my shoulder at this point. And I don't even think in this frame you can see the absolute pumpkin takeover. So let me show you that. I'm not sure if you can even still see the kind of hugeness that is the pumpkin plant behind me, but it makes me so happy and I love to see it. But also, I really should have put a trellis in the bed that the pumpkins are in to the bed in front of it, because I kind of always forget how well plants can really grow. Like, I think I've talked about this before, but that kind of imposter syndrome almost type feeling where you're like, is anything actually going to grow? Even though I grew just fine. I did fine gardening the year before. Is anything actually going to grow? And yeah, it grows. I'm past that point. So the only issue with that is it's going to kind of take over my whole lawn, which is not really an issue other than it blocks me from kind of getting to the tomatoes a little bit. I also really could have planned my spacing for this garden bed better. I have a deer fence all the way around that I built last year with help, and that has been working amazing. No issues at all from anything. But I really should have brought this bed that I have going the whole way across forward, so I had a good walking path on that side for when it comes to harvesting, because what I will have to do is kind of just harvest from outside of the fence, and I think it'll be okay. But at this point, with this kind of growth, it's really kind of hindered me from getting in there and weeding on that side at all. Not that the weeds seem to be hindering any growth that we got going on. But what is my mission in the garden today? Well, I'm gonna go in and kind of trim off some of the excess of the tomatoes that we just don't need. So where I am, I really don't have a hard time when it comes to disease in tomatoes. And that is so lucky. I'm not sure why that is, because we get plenty of rain, and you'd think that that would be something that would cause some issues, especially with tomatoes that are this overgrown. But no issues at all. But it has been raining super, super hard for days, and my tomatoes look absolutely fine. There's no signs of powdery mildew or anything like that. But still, I think it is smart to go in and give some trimming so things don't shade other things that I don't want to be shaded, and so that there isn't a chance of any disease or a pest just from things touching the ground. And I'm gonna attempt to kind of pull things up again. I have this kind of fencing through the middle to try to keep the tomatoes up and off the ground, but that's doing okay. I guess it's doing an okay job. But yeah, I'm just gonna go in there, do some chops, and just kind of see what I can do. I'm also going to look at my squash. If there's any more things to hand pollinate, I will. With just the amount that I grow, I always come in and hand pollinate myself because it's super easy. And although we do get pollinators, we don't get as many now that kind of the dandelion blooms are out of season. And I'm not growing a huge pumpkin patch or anything, so I might as well just get in there and make sure things are pollinated. I'll definitely show you some of the squash we already have growing, And I think it's just the pumpkins so far that are really going off, but they are really growing. I'm also going to harvest some herbs today and get those dried. I really kind of let my oregano go, and it's starting to get close to flowering. I've had to pick some flowers off. Same with basil. My basil is actually really doing great, which I'm very happy about, but I kind of missed the tip of really pruning it back so that it gets bushier. I kind of did not know about that until it's not too late, but a little too late to really get the benefit. But without further ado, let us dive into the tomato jungle, as I affectionately like to call it, and just see if we can make this a little bit of a easier to maintain jungle. Enjoy the shade while I melt. So here we are, and here's a example of a tomato plant. So the tomato plant really has three key parts to it. There's the main stem, you would say, and that's easily recognizable as that's what is coming out. It's thicker than the other stems. There are sun leaves, which their only purpose is to just make a lot of leaves to absorb the sun to keep the plant healthy. So those are very necessary. And then there's what we call the suckers. And suckers have the potential to put out blossoms like this one right here. And on indeterminate tomato plants, like I believe almost all of mine, I really wish I knew what tomato plants were which, but the chaos of me, every single year I label them, and every single year by the time they're in the ground, the labels are nowhere to be found. But in an indeterminate tomato plant, with every sucker is the potential for a lot more growth to happen. As we can see here on this plant, they really sprawled off in so many ways. And so there's balance to it. There's really good and bad that comes to kind of letting things go a little more crazy, like I clearly have, and keeping things a little more prim and proper. So when you let a plant kind of go crazy, one, it's harder to control, harder to keep staked up. And so as you see down here, we have blossoms very close to the ground. And what that gives potential for is for the tomatoes to simply just go to pests that are close to the ground. It leaves potential for more water to get on the fruit and to just kind of mush it up, mold. Same with all these leaves that are down here. Let me go ahead and just trim one of these sun leaves that I see way down here. And relatively healthy, but you can still see there are some kind of spots that either just got wet from being close to the ground or started to maybe get disease. But either way, we don't need these kind of sun leaves because they're not even really getting the sun at this point. They're just completely shaded out and just on the ground. So anything like that, I'm going to go ahead and chop right off. Oh, I'll have to get a close-up on this because I don't think you can see. But this is also what happens when tomatoes go crazy. And as many of you probably know, if you grow tomatoes, they can start growing roots from anywhere on the stem. That's why when you first put them in the ground, it's so great to kind of give them a little bit more depth to planting them. You don't want to just plant them where you see the roots initially, but I always plant them a little deeper. When you let it go crazy, and it'll start kind of going into my lawn because I see roots right along here, the parts that are growing out and touching, and they're coming out onto the lawn. Like I said, this is fully my fault. It's not necessarily because I've been neglecting the garden, because truthfully I haven't. I've been coming out and keeping up with weeds and giving it water pretty much every day that it's not raining. But it really does bring me quite a joy to see plants seemingly thriving this much. I'm definitely more of a, I don't know what the word is for it. I prefer kind of the wildness of gardens and gardens that kind of get leeway to do their own thing, opposed to gardens that are really thought out. And That might sound funny, especially since I'm kind of an artist and I have kind of a designer's eye, but in the same way, I just don't like things to be overly done. Not to reiterate things I've already said, but there's definitely balance to keeping a garden, and there's not necessarily a right way to do it either. Like in my case, this is not a huge deal, but in other climates, this could potentially cost people their entire tomato harvest due to disease that having tomatoes go so rampant like this could cause. But despite the impracticality of it, it still is bringing me great joy, and I still have a hard time with trimming back even just this little bit that I'm deciding to trim back. Man, can you imagine though if I did have trellises? These tomatoes would really be taken off upward on the trellises. That needs to be a goal of mine for next year. I think it'd be too late now to put these on cattle panels or something like that, but my initial plan was to buy some cattle panels, but I did not find them in the first store I looked, and I guess I just didn't try very hard to find them in a different store. My focus was elsewhere, I suppose. I'm not sure if you can see this too, but this is my cilantro that completely went to flower, and that's okay. It's really pretty. It's nice to have in the garden, but I planted it in here thinking that the tomatoes would shade it out and so that it wouldn't go to seed so fast. But I think the combination of the fact that the tomatoes were not that big when I planted them all together, and also just this is not a slow boat cilantro, this is just regular cilantro. My theory did not really work. Let's just say that. But it is nice to have in here in the garden, and I can still give this coriander to my guinea pigs, so that works. Something that I'm not sure why I didn't predict, but is definitely the case, is the squash very much intermingling with the tomato plants. And I really don't know why I didn't think about that, because I know how big squash can get. I will say last year was my very first year doing squash, and it was pumpkin, the same pumpkin that I'm doing this year. And I saw how kind of crazy it went. I had it over in the bed that I have my russet potatoes in this year, and it really did take off. It spread across the lawn, and it did really well. I don't know why I didn't think about possibly giving it a little bit more space in between the tomatoes. It's because everything was so small when I planted it. Everything was so small, and I just did not think. And so in here in the tomato, if you just go right here, this is squash, really just intermingling, and as squash does, it is having its little tendrils wrapping around, and currently I see it wrapping around the coriander, which is a choice, but I definitely am just fully accepting that it's going to be kind of chaos, and I'm kind of not going to be able to weed very well at this point, and I need to just be diligent in searching. I can see from where I'm sitting right now some tomatoes, green tomatoes on this plant growing, and I've seen tomatoes throughout here growing, and I am just so excited. This is definitely going to be the earliest that I get a ripe tomato that ever any year I've been growing tomatoes. But I will definitely have to play some hide and seek because even with my trimming back today, it's just not going to do a whole lot to help the situation. And is that partly because I'm not trimming off as much as I potentially should? That could be true. However, that is okay because, like I just keep saying, I am a fan of a wild, crazy garden. At this point in my gardening career, so to speak, I want to have a plentiful harvest. I want to get as much as I can. It's definitely a very practical dream and desire for me, gardening is, but at the same time, it's not so much so that I have to take away any little joys that come or just the overall fun and pleasantness of it, I guess you could say. I guess I'm saying It's not like my career or anything depends on exactly how much I produce. It won't be the biggest loss to me ever if I miss some fruit and it goes to bugs. I am definitely going to get lots of fruit. There's no doubt. I am already planning that I'll have to probably buy some more jars for canning up this year. And I say this every year, but every year it has remained true that this will be my best, most successful garden to date. And my huge amount of tomatoes is just only a little part of that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut off things that are just kind of in the ground, kind of just too far down. I'm debating whether I should get some rope or twine and just kind of go around and try to really tie everything back that is kind of falling over. That was the point of having the fence in the first place. So I think I will go ahead and look for something to do that with. But I'm just going to continue to trim a little bit and then I'll do that. I also need to take a little bit of a sun break as it is so hot. I haven't looked at the temperature yet, but it feels really hot. Is that because I am from the cold north? That is correct. Could I ever withstand a summer in Texas? No, I could not. I truly don't know how I would survive in heat like that. I don't think people do. I think people have to garden in the middle of the night in Texas in the summer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my theory. But I'm going to go ahead and keep trimming along, and I will talk to you in a little bit. That wind feels so nice. I really hope these tomatoes shade me. This is ridiculous when I can see it in the camera. Oh my. I really do love it though. I really do. I got something that may work. Where are my scissors though? I still need those. Where did I even put them? Well, I couldn't find the ones that I literally just had, but I grabbed another pair. I will probably find them when I step on them. This is kind of what I mean by tricky from my beautiful pumpkin. However, it's definitely kind of keeping me from the fence and the trellis. But I'm just gonna go ahead, do a nice square knot. I didn't do rock climbing for nothing. Delicately, without stepping on my squash plants. Let's do that. Pick this. Pick this. Oh, I dropped it. Is that doing anything? I'm not sure yet. So ideally, I would tie it to the fence, but I'm not sure if it's stable enough. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay. Can you hold that squash plant? No? Okay. And with that, we'll tie real nice. Maybe if I make sure everything's... That did something. That definitely did something. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think that definitely did something. Now I'll do it the other half of the garden. Yeah, that works well. Can we just take a second to look at the amount of flowers? This is that crazy cherry one. It must be, because look at all of those. Oh my goodness. Okay, now that we have the tomatoes kind of tied up, I definitely want to get in there and give some better trimming later. But it is just so hot. It is 85, and that's crazy for me. So I'm just going to finish off by harvesting some of the herbs. I'm starting off with the oregano, and you can see it is starting to kind of go to flower. I've honestly left it too long before harvesting any, but now is as good a time as ever to just take off a huge amount of this. And this is so easy. I'm probably gonna tie it up and just let it dry upside down inside like that. There, gotta try to get a good tan. Oregano is definitely one of my favorite herbs, and why I'm so glad that it is perennial here and just is so readily able to grow and kind of take over a space. It's in the same family as mint, and they are just really known for kind of almost being weed level if you put them somewhere that you don't really want them to take over. But in my case, I'm very happy about it because I use it a lot. I use it on my chicken for like Italian style. I use it in soups and my spaghetti sauces. I use it in my homemade salad dressings. And oregano actually has some really good health benefits as well. You can use it medicinally. So just all around a fantastic herb to grow. If you're thinking about starting an herb garden and haven't yet, I would definitely put oregano on the top of your list, because if it's perennial for me, it's perennial for most places. I don't know if it gets too hot anywhere for oregano, but I think it is perennial in even zone 4, which is colder than where I am. But watch, I'll give this a big trim like I'm doing right now, and it'll come right back. Give it like a week. Harvesting a huge amount of herbs like this is always fun too, because it's just kind of like giving a little haircut. We'll leave our oregano there, I think, for today, and that is how much. Oh, I'm dropping some. This is how much oregano. Very nice amount. And I will definitely bring this in to wrap up, but I'm going to harvest a couple more first. So let's go see what else is ready to be harvested. Here we got some basil, and I'm happy with how well it did this year. I've mentioned that I've had bad luck with basil, but I'm really happy with it. I think I've mentioned previously, but I kind of have let it go crazy a little bit. It's definitely gone to flower, but I think I'll still get some more out of it. And just from this one, I got a nice handful. I have another one over there too that I'll check out. Okay, we are inside. We got our oregano, like I showed you. We got our basil, and I grabbed some parsley. And the parsley, I don't really use parsley in my own cooking. I haven't grown it before, but I got it because now I have pet guinea pigs, and so I don't do anything with this. I don't dry it, I don't preserve it. I give it to the guinea pigs. So I will do that. Oh my. There's one for you. There's one for you. And there's one for you. So now that they are fed, I am going to go ahead and bundle the oregano into bundles that I can dry. It is on my to-do list to make one of those DIY drying racks for herb kind of things. Have not yet, so just going to do the old-fashioned, tying it up in little bundles and just hanging them around, and that usually does the trick really well. So easy peasy, I'm just going to grab some of the oregano that I cut off. I'm going to put the part that I cut from down all together here. That's what I'll tie from. And leaving the tops on the bottom. And I just have some hemp twine here. Nothing fancy. Wrap it around a couple times. Tie a little knot. And yeah, you basically just want to hang this somewhere that's dry. That's kind of obvious if you're trying to get the moisture out of the herb. That's the goal. You want it to be dry. You also want it to be dark. You don't want to dry them in the direct sun. That's not going to give you the effect that you're hoping for. And you want to make sure there is good air circulation. So in a closet may not be the best idea because there's not a lot of air circulation. We're just trying to essentially give this the best chance to have the moisture be taken out of it while not taking out any of the essential oil that helps to the flavor or to the medicinal properties, and also leaving it in an environment that it's not going to grow any mold or anything like that on it. So one done. I misplaced my scissors again, but once I find those, it won't take me long at all to get the rest of this bundled up. And then we'll hang up, and that'll be it for this video. Thank you guys for spending some time with me in the garden today. If you like this kind of content and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing so that you can join our community of like-minded folk. I put out a new video every Monday, and it's always something about homesteading, homemaking, or just living a more slow and simple life. So if that kind of stuff does interest you, I really do hope you stick around. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!